All right, these two chapters, 9 and 10, are on development in middle childhood, which is going to be our 6 to 12-year-olds or school-aged kids before they hit puberty. So our body growth at this time, we are still in a slow, regular pattern. We expect to see the same growth that we saw in early childhood. So we're looking for 2 to 3 inches gained per year and 5 to 7 pounds gained per year. Again, that's an average. Some kids are going to be a little bit less, some kids are going to be a little bit more, but that's around what we want to see from 6 to 12. Girls are shorter and lighter until about age 9 when they have a little bit of a growth spurt. Now, most girls will stop growing when they hit puberty. So by the age of 12, they're done. They do not grow anymore. Boys, however, continue having growth spurts all the way through puberty, through adolescence, even up until 18, 19 years old. So the girls get kind of their final big spurt right here at the end of middle of childhood, and that's usually it for them. Lower portion of the body is growing the fastest. Their legs are growing, they're getting taller, they're getting bigger. Bones are getting longer, their muscles are very flexible, and all their permanent teeth will arrive. So all their baby teeth will fall out at some point. It'll be done between 6 and 12, and all of the permanent teeth will be in. So some children obviously will then be put into braces at some point during this stage. Common health problems that we see with our kids are malnutrition, obesity, and different illnesses that any kid has, especially kids specifically in industrialized countries. Colds, coughs, and then our more hardcore childhood health illnesses like cancers. So our health risks for our obese and overweight children. If you are overweight at this stage in life, at 6 to 12, you are much more likely to be overweight in adulthood because our eating patterns and our exercise patterns and things like that are starting to get fixed. And so it's really hard to change out of that. And then you're also, once you put weight on, it's a lot harder to put weight off. And you also can't put a child on a diet. So if you do have a child who is overweight, they need to see a pediatrician and a pediatric nutritionalist who can help them increase good food, decrease bad food so that they slim down. But you don't want to just restrict calories in a child because they need those to be growing. The lifelong health risks that we have for our overweight kids, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, respiratory problems, they're more likely to have asthma, they're more likely to have diabetes. We are seeing kids with type 2 diabetes now, and we never saw that in the past. Usually it was just type 1 diabetes, and that's why it was called juvenile diabetes, and type 2 was, adult diabetes. But we see kids now that are so overweight and obese that they are now, having type 2 diabetes. Liver and gallbladder disease is more common. The liver and the gallbladder are, trying to wash out, all the toxins in your body, and the more that you put in, the more you're kind of, putting those under pressure. You're more likely to have sleep and digestive disorders. Overweight kids are more likely to have sleep apnea, more likely to have just, all through the digestive system, problems with heartburn and GERD and diarrhea and irritable bowel syndrome, just all of that. Being overweight puts you at an increased risk of cancer as you get older, and you are more likely to die earlier than you should. All right, so causes of obesity and being overweight in middle childhood are the same as pretty much at any point in life. If you have overweight parents, obviously if the parents are making really bad food choices, not exercising, then that's going to funnel down to the children. You're also to be more likely to be overweight if you are low SES. So people in low socioeconomic status areas are more likely to be obese for multiple reasons. One of those reasons is they don't have access to as healthy of foods. So if you go down to poorer parts of town, there are a lot of fast food restaurants. but there aren't a whole lot of grocery stores or places to get fresh produce. And if I'm poor and I've got 3 kids and I've got $20 on me, I can take my 3 kids and myself to McDonald's and get, the 20 chicken McNuggets and a large fries and, large drinks and feed all my kids for $10. Then I have $10 left over to, pay a bill. So just the fact that it's cheap is, and it's there, it's what's available, um, just puts people with low SES at a higher risk of being overweight. Um, Parents' feeding practices play a role. Overfeeding your kids or being overly controlling. Giving kids, portion sizes that are the size of an adult's is already overfeeding them. Adults already eat portions that are too big for adults. So expecting a child to eat something that is, adult size is just giving them way too many calories. So they should be eating way less than what an adult would eat, and adults should be eating way less than what they're eating for the most part. We've also found that overly controlling a child's diet can lead to obesity. So parents that, refuse to let their children have sugar, refuse to let their kids, ever have fast food, things like that, actually leads to the children making poor food choices when they have to choose for themselves. So there was a study done actually where they took kids from homes that, the parents never allowed them any sugar, any sweets, anything, and then kids from homes that the parents let them just eat whatever they want whenever they wanted, and then homes where the parents would let the kids have sugar in moderation. And they took, these 3 groups of kids and they put them in a room full of, cupcakes and candies and, all kinds of sugary goodness. And then there was toys and other things to play with in the room. And so they wanted to see, what would they do? And the kids that whose parents never let them have any sugar, like they just made a beeline to those snacks and just started shoving them in their face, like just eating non-stop, just shove, 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 shove. And the kids whose parents let them eat whatever they want also tended to overeat. But the children whose parents would let them have it in moderation pretty much just walked up to the table, picked out one cupcake, ate it, and then went and played with the toys. So, the lesson here being that, don't completely remove all sweets from the kids. Don't let them do whatever, don't let them choose all of their food choices because they're not going to make good choices on their own yet. But you need to, in moderation, let them have some things so that they know how to eat in moderation. That really is what can help prevent obesity in our kids. We also have very low physical activity in our children these days. Kids do not play outside as much as they used to. They're cutting down on PE in schools. They don't have PE every day. In some places, they don't have PE at all. They're being more sedentary. They're sitting, they're playing on their iPads and their video games, and they're not, actually moving around. And we know, as adults, we know that the sedentary lifestyle is really bad for your health and makes you more likely to be overweight, and that's true for our children as well. Um, just the amount of television that our children watch, and that includes everything from Netflix to, DVDs, just all the, watching of a screen. A study that came out about maybe 1 or 2 years ago found that the average child watches 25 hours of television per week, which is insane. That's more than an entire day of the week spent watching television. So obviously that's contributing to the sedentary lifestyle. Cultural food environment also plays a role, and this also can link back into lower SCS. So if you're lower socioeconomic status, you're also more likely to be an ethnic minority, and ethnic minorities are more likely to have food that tends to be, fried food and maybe not as healthy food. So the cultural food environment that you were raised with, plays a role. So, for example, like my family was Mexican, and so we always had rice and refried beans and tamales, and like lard was in everything. My aunties would have, like these huge things of lard just sitting around the house, like, oh, it needs more lard. Um, so just, not the healthiest. There wasn't a whole lot of vegetables. There was a lot of carbs. There was a lot of meats, but they were, fatty red meats, a lot of it. So that cultural food environment, played into, the choices of food that I made, and it was what was presented to me. But it's not all cultural food environments, because when we look at a lot of the Asian cultures, their cultural food environment is actually quite healthy, with a lot of fish and a lot of vegetables, and putting them at a much lower risk of obesity. But when you kind of combine a cultural food environment that has a lot of fatty foods, a lot of fried foods, a lot of carbs, add that into also being low socioeconomic status, add that into low physical activity, or the parents overfeeding, and you have multiple, of these bullet points, then the kid is just much more likely to be overweight or obese, putting them at all those other health risks. All right, so our illnesses in our middle childhood kids, we have our highest rates of illnesses the first 2 years of school. This is because they are, being exposed to all these other kids who have all these other germs. It's usually the highest in kids who haven't really gone to daycare. So if they've been at home the whole time and then they start kindergarten and now all of a sudden they're around all these other kids, they're just more likely to get sick. Their little immune systems tend to build up a little bit more, and they can, become a little bit healthier around second, third grade. We don't see as many illnesses happening. We do see some chronic conditions happening in our kids, like asthma. Just if a kid has asthma, we're likely to have it diagnosed at this time. It's also more likely if the child is overweight. Severe chronic illnesses, can also be diagnosed at this time, like juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, um, that the child will have to deal with, for the rest of their lives. It's going to be something that they're going to have to, be managing, from now on, which is, kind of a bummer for those kids. Motor development in middle childhood, gross motor skills are way better. I mean, these kids can pretty much do anything. They're much more flexible. They can balance better. They've got better agility. They can put more force behind something. So, think about a 2-year-old with a bat hitting a ball and a 10-year-old with a bat hitting a ball, very different. And also, how can you hit a ball with the baseball with a bat? You have to have balance, you have to have agility, you have to have flexibility and put a lot of force behind it. A 10-year-old has way more of all of these things than a 2-year-old does. So they get better at sports and things like that at this time. Fine motor skills also much better. Their writing skills between 6 and 12, develop greatly. A kindergartner's printing, not that great, but a sixth grader's, much better. Drawing skills also get better. But if you're not an artistic person, they usually kind of tap out at the top of this. Like by age 12, if you're not great at drawing and you don't really work on it, you're just kind of stick to that, ability where you're at 12 for the rest of your life. Kind of like me, you've all seen my drawings. They're not great. All right, so some of our sex differences in motor development. Girls tend to be better with fine motor skills, like drawing and printing, and boys tend to be better with gross motor skills, like sports. There may be a true sex difference here, just because girls' brains and boys' brains are slightly different. However, the social environment plays a very big role in this. We encourage girls to do more fine motor skills while we encourage boys to do more gross motor skills. So the social environment of parental expectations, right? Dad wants his boy to be a baseball player, be a football player, play soccer, climb and run and do manly boy things. And a girl, dress up pretty like a princess and have a tea party and draw a pretty picture. It's, very different expectations for the two kids. Then their self-perceptions. What do they perceive? Do they perceive themselves as, someone who's good at sports, or someone who, is good at drawing? And then we got our coaching and media messages that are going on. How is the coach talking to the kids? Are they, encouraging the children? With the media messages, where we see a big, sex difference is that, when we look at sports, it's very, male. The professional sports are male. We watch the men playing football. We watch the men playing baseball, the men playing hockey, the men playing basketball. Are there female leagues? Yes. Do we see them on television? No. We could probably right now name, 20 male athletes, but trying to name 20 female athletes would be difficult because they're not, as widely